Hello, in this film I'm going to be showing you how I make small notebooks for the likes of field notes and moleskines, little leather notebook covers, and they're jolly useful. This film's being sponsored by Sedgwick Leather, and in an earlier film I showed you their lovely bridle leather to make some belts. Well, they make all sorts of leathers, and in fact the Sedgwick group along with Clayton's make about 3,000 different types of leather, so you name it, they have a leather there. I'll pop some links down below so you know where you can buy Sedgwick's leather, and let's get making the notebooks. And the first step will be cutting out, and to do that I'm going to use my 20-ton press. So I've got a garage bearing press here, and all I've done is put a slab of steel between the cross beam. I've got a cutting board. I've then got a homemade clicker die. So this is a steel cutting edge which I've bent round and I've sunk into a couple of layers of plywood. And all I do is I do a few of these. I lay my leather over the cutter, pop it in the press. I have to take this up a little bit. Spread the load of a metal block, and then I just give it a few pumps. Bring it down and it will cut out those bits of leather that I need. Oh, you get that nice satisfying noise, you know it's done it. So hopefully it's done it. Spreading back out the way. And then that's cut out, you see quite well. I've got my leather shapes cut out. There's always a little bit of a sort of gap where my cutter dies meet, and I think I'm going to need to learn a bit of TIG welding or MMA, inverter welding, to weld the thin cutters. But anyway, that's another story, I think, or another film one of these days. It's still vastly quicker obviously using a cutter. If you didn't have a press, all you'd need to do is cut out a rectangle and then just use an arc cutter on the corners. So it gives me a few sets to be sewing. I quite like to do these things in a small batch if I'm making them. So what I'm doing now, I'm just going to cut out the inside little slip over panels. So the notebook will slip in to these pockets. It'll be stitched around the outside here. It will then fold. So that's it open, that's it closed. Give you a rough idea. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to skive down the edges of the leather so that it's a bit thinner. If I didn't do this process, it would all look rather clumpy. And to do that, I've got this machine. Oops. So greatly speeds up the process, so you get it shaves off and gives you that nice edge. Again, just gets it. I could do this by hand with using a skiving knife, but it's obviously far quicker. So this is called a bell knife skiver. Having skived around with my skiving machine, I'm now just going to put a bit of glue along the seams and then glue the inner panels to the outer one. And the reason I'm gluing it is twofold really. One is it obviously helps when I come to do the machine sewing, but the other thing is it also helps keep the panels nice and close when they have been sewn. So you feel like you've got that double. You've got not only is it glued all down, it's sewn all down. Okay, just doing the final trim up on these. Just want to say actually, I mean, I'm using the lovely Sedgwicks here, but they do a huge range of leathers, and in fact if you go onto the Abbey England website, I'll pop a link just below, you'll see some of them, but they do a very nice lacing hide. It's about 1.82mm thick, and it's good for obviously larger journals and such like. It's a nice leather. So yeah, do take a look at Abbey England and what's there in the way of the Sedgwicks. Obviously they've got the full range of all the Sedgwicks bridle, which is beautiful, and you'll get different sorts of colours. Lovely. It's all firm, it's very nice quality stuff. As you know, I put a film up on the long belts and you can see the quality of it there. Right, ready for the sewing machine. For the sewing up, I'm going to be using a fairly fine thread and also a fairly small stitch. Little hint here, if you use a smaller stitch it's easier to go around corners, otherwise they can be quite tricky. So we'll get sewing. I'm sewing from the outside in, and I've put a couple of very faint dots on the outside so I can see where I'm going. I've got an edge guide also to try and help me here. I'm using a cylinder arm machine as it's a very nice working height, and I like this machine for its stitch. You could obviously do this sort of work on a flat bed, and probably most people would actually. I've got a flat bed, but I just probably prefer it for this, the cylinder arm. We're coming up to the first corner, so taking it fairly slowly. Down we go. The straights are obviously a lot easier. Before running this machine I did do a tension check to make sure that my thread tensions were all okay, so I just do that on a scrap of leather. Next corner. You've got to try and keep an even rate of stitching and an even rate of turning with the corners. They are tricky. That's my next end mark, into reverse. So I'm just back stitching about 4 or 5 stitches on the back. So I'm using a wool dauber with the die. That just makes it all look a bit more finished. That's that one. Polish up. Hammering stitches down, it's the same with hand sewing, it just makes it all blend in nicely. For name embossing I'm using brass type, so it's brass engraved bookbinders type. You get each letter there, you see. And so you load the type into the carriage here and you heat it up. Now I've popped the film up on this machine in this unit. So the unit is a heat controller which I've designed myself using a PID, and the idea behind this is it gives a very precise temperature to your type. Basically there's a heating plate here and there's a thermocouple, so you get perfect temperature on your type, and I can dial in exactly what I want. I've put a metal plate behind where I'm embossing. I'm going to do this one in gold, so I'm going to put some gold leaf underneath there. Make sure we're all lined up nicely. And then down we go. And there we have it. I just need to scratch it out on the surface of the R, which I'll do. So there you are, a couple of pocket notebooks all completed. And just to show you what this will look like inside, so, whoops, out comes bits of paper. That's the notebook inside. So it does cover it very nicely, and you've got space there for a few little cards or whatever. So they're all marked up and done. So hope you enjoyed seeing that one, some little making processes. I'll put some links down below for the Sedgwick Leathers, because they do some really lovely leathers, and if you're in the UK, take a look at Abbey, England in particular, where you'll find a good selection. But absolutely lovely stuff. Anyway, I will see you in the next film, and I'd like to say thanks very much to Sedgwick Leather for sponsoring this film. Bye bye then.